Well, I'm going to talk about Repton and music, with his relationship with music, with his own activity, his relations with other musicians and his clients. He recorded in his memoirs how his love of painting and music was established through his experience as a young man living in Holland in a cultured family who enjoyed these things. And he yearned for social contact with his most valued clients and met many important and eminent politicians, artists, and musicians as he travelled around the country. Late 18th century provincial England was rich in musical activity. Amateur music societies in towns such as York, Salisbury, Chichester, Canterbury, Bath, of course, and his own adopted home city of Norwich. And these amateur societies paid the best professionals to come from London. And music festivals such as Three Choirs Festival, which we know Repton attended with a client, were flourishing. He recorded that he was never tired of hearing good music and attended rehearsals and performances of the ancient concerts. This was the original Academy of Ancient Music, concerts of which were held in Hanover Square Rooms in London. At that time, Haydn was in London, composing the London symphonies, and the London Bach, Johann Christian, that is one of the sons of Johann Sebastian, organised subscription concerts with his friend Abel, who was a friend of and also was painted by Gainsborough. And I'm sure Repton would have attended these concerts and been introduced there to potential clients. Musical ability was a positive social attribute, and Repton was a welcome house guest for his singing voice and for his flute playing. In the Red Book for Batworth, he represents himself playing under a tree, accompanied by what looked like the family members who are playing mandolin and singing. The flute was a handy instrument to carry around and play in any spare moment, and was a particularly suitable instrument for a gentleman, but it wouldn't have been played by the ladies as it would have distorted the face. The ladies played the keyboard or plucked instrument, or particularly the harp, which put the body in a especially attractive pose, which showed off the arms. In his memoirs, Repton described a visit to Harwood House, where the family gathered every evening after dinner for music making. You might find it surprising that the servants were included in this music party, but especially in remoter parts of the country, a servant could recommend themselves for employment if they could hold a part in singing, and they were also used to bolster the church choir. Repton recorded that Lady Harwood played the piano and a gentleman accompanied her on the violin. This seems a bit strange, but you'd think that the piano would accompany the violin, but no. The social hierarchy has to be preserved, even in a musical group, where the musical hierarchy might appear to be in the reverse. At Harwood, visitors such as Repton took part in glees. These were secular part songs, but on Sundays only sacred music was played. Repton reported that on one occasion when a certain Mr. Wilberforce, who we've just met in Patrick's talk, when Mr. Wilberforce was present, the other singers were encouraged to hold back in order that the fine tenor voice of the distinguished guest could be heard above the others. Repton knew Charles Burney, father of Fanny and musical historian, and recorded that when they met at Bulstrode, they were already old friends. A letter from Burney to Repton says, "How delightfully do I now see with my mind's eye your muttons and your little deer browsing and cropping their flowery food in your parks and paddocks and lawns. Would to the Lord I had a place for you to lay out, but I shall be laid out myself long before that will happen. We're now going to leave Yorkshire and travel south to Sussex, and this image on your screen portrays the characters in my story rather well, although I've got no evidence that these are the people represented in the picture. So Gilray represents a very plausible scene. We have Repton playing the flute, possibly. Newbury, his client at Heathfield Park, was a fanatical violinist, and possibly his daughter Mary at the piano. So this is a typical amateur family scene. Note the dogs and the children just hovering around. These are my principal characters of the Heathfield Park story. Now, on the left, we have Newbury, who bought Heathfield Park in 1791 and commissioned the Red Book in 1794. In the middle, we have our friend Repton, and on the right, William Crotch, the composer. So Crotch was also a painter. He painted Heathfield Park. And funnily enough, Crotch came from Norwich. These representations give a rather false impression of their ages, as Crotch was 20 years younger than Repton, and Newbury was a lot older than Crotch when they would have met. And then our fourth member of the story is Mary, who I don't have a daughter of Newbury. I don't have an image of her. But Crotch grew up in Norwich, and he was a child prodigy. So it's possible that when Repton was 25, Crotch was being a child prodigy at 2.5. So it's possible that Repton would have come across him before they possibly met at Heathfield Park. This is the Peacock's image of Heathfield, 1795. The tower was built before Repton arrived there by Newbury in 1792, and it commemorates the courage of the previous owner of Heathfield Park, General Elliot, at the siege of Gibraltar. Repton painted the view from the tower, which I'm going to show a bit later, painted a scene through the round window of the tower. This is Crotch, William Crotch's painting of the woods at Heathfield Park, 1809. He was, I suppose you'd call him a competent painter, but there are many of his paintings in the Brighton Museum archives of scenes in Brighton where he lived. Now, if you look at your handout, you'll find the text of the songs we're going to hear, with a commentary relating it to Repton's description of Heathfield Park and the music that Crotch used to illustrate the words. Now, these glees use Mary's poems, which were based on the Repton text. And Mary's poems were published by her father after her death. She died in 1804, and the poems were published in 1815. And if you look at the bottom of the screen, you'll see that he acknowledges that music's been set by Dr. Crotch, but not set to the music by the lady, as you'll read at the top. So we realise that she's no longer with us. So she was obviously a composer and a poet. And we need to notice that there are two songs, the leaving and the returning. Now, if I was composing two songs, I suppose I would compose arrival and leave. But no, this is leave and come back. But she didn't come back, because by then she died, which is rather sad. So Crotch set these texts, and this is the return to Heathfield Park, which again is based on Repton's description. We have in the same printed collection Newbery, Mary's father's sonnet on her death, and it's wonderful. We can tell so much about her from this short poem, using many musical references, dulcet notes, strains, plaintive tones. Her tuneful fingers wake the according wire, meaning a piano wire, and she's gone to swell the hallelujahs of the heavenly choir. This implies she was not just a singer, but a poet, pianist, and composer. So here the opening of the two songs, and you'll notice on the left the leaving 5 parts and the returning 4 parts. So it occurred to me that she was one of the people who didn't return, and the second soprano is now lacking. And also Newbery takes credit for the text, probably preserving her status as a lady who perhaps wouldn't have had her work published. So I'm now going to invite the singers to come and perform these songs. And this is the Haileybury Choir, so Haileybury Singers. And I'm really grateful to Andrew O'Brien and Simon Bland for arranging this, which is a very short event for quite a lot of work, I imagine. And I'm going to show some images from the Red Book. And before we do that, I'll just read Repton's description from the Theory and Practice. This is how he wrote in the Theory and Practice. It is hardly possible to convey an adequate and distinct idea of those numerous objects so wonderfully combined into one perfect whole. The house, the church, the lawns and woods, the distant plains bounded by the ocean, and the promontory of Beachy Head are all collected in one splendid picture without being crowded into confusion. We know how he hated things crowded into the view. This is Turner's picture of the Vale of Heathfield. You can see the Beachy Head in the distance, the sea, the house. And this is Repton's version of the same view. Church, distance, house, the Vale of Heathfield. So as they're singing, I'm going to show these images so you can get an idea of how the poetry, music, and the words all combine. Mm.